101 FM, the family station, and it's now time for Family Time.
Good evening, good evening, good evening to you, everyone who is joining us this evening. I want to say a special welcome to everyone, including those on the Love 101 Facebook and YouTube Live that are joining us. A special good evening to you. You can join us on our Facebook page, that's the Love 101 Facebook page, and the Love 101 YouTube channel, and you can watch us live. Family Time is about your issues and your relationships, your at-home family, your community family, and your global family. Family Time is produced by Family Life Ministries, and our aim is to enable healthy families, which will lead to healthy nations. So stay with us and join in via all platforms. Come spend some time with us. What happened to you the moment you learned that someone you loved had a life-threatening illness, that they may be terminally ill? Maybe you went into denial mode. Maybe you instinctively pushed the news away, pushed it to the back of your mind, or perhaps you cried or swung into action, or maybe you experienced all of the above. No matter what happened to you during that day or that time, life went on regardless. But how was that life for you from that moment forward, when you had to watch that person that you love transition out of this life as we know it? Today's topic is you, when they are terminally ill. We invite you to think about that question for a moment and then tell us what you think. Who or what was your lifeline when you watched your loved one pass away? You can send us your comments via WhatsApp text or voice notes. Keep those voice notes no longer than 30 seconds, and you can send them to 876-997-3125. Or you can give us a call in studio, 876-968-8327 or 876-968-8328 to participate. And throughout the program, we'll share what you share with us on this question. So again, the question is, who or what was your lifeline as you watched your loved one pass away? Remember, you can watch us live now on Love 101, the Facebook and YouTube page, that is. And we'll be right back with our guests, Richard Dennison and Sonia Winter. Don't go anywhere.
Real estate is big business. There are actually quite a few ways to make money by adding real estate to your investment strategy, such as buy shares in real estate or related companies, go with a fund featuring real estate packages in a single curated portfolio, become a proprietor and earn passive income from your vacation and long-term residential tenants or from commercial leases.
Visit barita.com/opportunities for more growth coach insights.
DIGICEL. First in a class when you have Digicel. Schoolers Prime Bundle, that's right. With your education, our website make you bright. Head to the top of your class with your first Digicel SIM and a Schoolers Prime Bundle. Get over 142 gigabytes of data so you can have access to educational sites, social media platforms, Digicel apps, and more for as low as $1,500 for 28 days. Get the Schoolers Prime Bundle with your first Digicel SIM card. Visit the Digicel store today. DIGICEL.
I say yeah, say cheese. Say cheese and keep on smiling. Oh, say cheese. Say cheese and keep on smiling. So much joy you bring, baby. Where you're gonna, people have to smile. Say cheese, say cheese. I just love you bring, baby. Where you're gonna, people have to smile.
We are all champions. Stay strong, Jamaica. Happy Cheese Month from Tasty Cheese.
Welcome back to Family Time on Love 101, and welcome to you, our special guests, Richard Dennison and Sonia Winter. Sonia is the founder of Tea House Therapy. She holds a master's degree in clinical psychology from the University of the West Indies, Mona, and is the only Gottman Level 3 trained clinical psychologist in the Caribbean. She occasionally provides therapy at Family Life Ministries. And Richard, whose mom passed away from cancer, had first-hand experience in watching a loved one pass on. Sonia, Richard, welcome. How are you both?
Good. Glad to be here.
Sonia, I think your mic is muted. Not hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Thanks for having me, Theresa. And hi, Richard.
Hi, Sonia. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so Richard, we are going to start with you. But before we get into that, I just want to remind our audience that we would like to hear from you. So please tell us who or what was your lifeline as you watched your loved one pass away. Send us your comments via WhatsApp, text, or voice notes. Keep those voice notes no longer than 30 seconds, though. And send them to 876-997-3125. And please watch us and comment on live on our Love 101 Facebook and YouTube channel. Or you can give us a call in studio on our lines 876-968-8327 or 876-968-8328 to participate. And throughout the program, we will share your thoughts. But back to you, Richard.
Sure.
Thank you for joining us. I want to say that I feel like I know you because I spent so many years going to seeing your mom and always hearing her speak of you, that even before meeting you, I felt like I knew who you were because I heard so much about you over the years. But I want you to talk to us a little bit. Tell us what your experience was watching your mom pass on, and just go through that journey of the period of illness and then her transition. What was that experience like for you as her child, and watching your loved one go through that?
Right. So, okay, let me start by establishing the basic sequence of events. So,
Okay.
Denison, my mother, had long suffered with fibroids and associated bleeding. That eventually went into menopause. Around mid to late 2017, she began having postmenopausal bleeding. I was around then, and she sent me to get sanitary napkins. Of course, I pressed her to go get checked about the bleeding. And while possibly, late manifestation of fibroids, it could also be indicative of something very serious. So it took some months harassing her until eventually she took the time to go and get the biopsy done in about early 2018. But per my understanding, the doctor lost the results and asked my mom to go in again to have it redone. Valuable time was lost then. In the time waiting on mom to go back, she made mention that she was seeping fluid from her navel. Alarmed, of course, I insisted that she immediately go get seen, which she did to her credit. She returned and told me that the doctor believed that she had an infection and had prescribed antibiotics. However, I was not fully convinced at all. And after gave some time for the medicine to work, I asked my mom the status, whereupon she said she had not noticed any change at all. It was still seeping. That point, I was like, you know what, Mom? Let me go get a magnifying glass and a light and, lift your blouse, right? What I saw, I didn't sleep for a month because what was there was not a navel anymore. It had completely transformed. And at that point, I realized it was almost instinctive. I knew this was it. The clock was set on her. I had to quickly do some research. It was a Sister Mary Joseph nodule, which is a malignant metastatic umbilical nodule. It's a sign of advanced malignancy. Sister Mary was a surgical assistant to Dr. William James Mayo, one of the founders of the Mayo Clinic in the USA. So the sister had noticed that it was a rare occurrence, but a consistent thing in cancer patients. So 5th of October, 2019, a colon biopsy confirmed endometrial carcinoma with a sigmoid mass invasion. Now, important words there, sigmoid mass invasion. The sigmoid is the S-shaped portion of the large intestine that passes right near the uterine area and ends, right? And it's possible for cancer to traverse the uterine lining and enter the colon in an area that is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to excise because of where it is. So my mother was effectively fighting two cancers, endometrial and colon.
Wow.
Had consequences. she could only be seen at University Hospital, as due to her advanced age and multiple cancers, it required the team to perform surgery on her in a single sitting. And as such, pulled down the surgery date by months. This is when her suffering began. The cancer spread into her stomach area as malignant ascites, which is an abnormal accumulation of fluid in the membranes that line the abdomen and organ, right? And the feeling, as she described it, of someone running a grater across your entire insides. She was beginning to have a great difficulty with pain eating food, and great difficulty with pain passing stool, as both areas were being challenged. She lived on the toilet night and day and was continuously losing weight, as she could barely eat, because anything but coconut water brought suffering. She had begun to starve. There are many horrible moments witnessing this soft, gentle woman suffer through some of the worst cancer can do to a human being. And, you know, it was almost everyday thing with her trying to swallow down a cocktail of medications of every kind, just to find any relief at all. I must say, through all of this, she never turned her back on God, not once. And she never spoke to the fact that she was dying. I only found out quite a time after she had passed that she had admitted it to one of my aunts. Eventually, as she got sick and sick and was admitted to University Hospital, but was denied the surgery because by then she was too weak. We moved her to medical associates in the hope that chemotherapy could buy us time, but she was too sick for that as well and needed to strengthen. However, after going sicker and after basically drowning every second of every minute for 3 days in her own fluids with no sleep, she told me she was ready to die, but she could not fight for breath another night.
I have to cut you here.
Yeah.
What was your experience through all of this? You're sharing what the
Right.
of the condition. What was it like for you? I want to hear your story. What was the range of emotions and how did you cope experiencing and observing all of this unfolding in front of you?
Right. A mixed bag. I actually, if I could wrap up this, I just want to lay out the basics because I'm going to sort of revisit little by little.
Well, in the interest of time, I'd love if we could have shift gears a little bit to your experience.
My experience, all right. Well, seeing her suffer like that was, as you can imagine, terrible. I personally consider myself a strong person, and in some ways, had prepared myself for this beforehand. But as she got sicker, you know, I luckily wasn't I was where we were living. I wasn't in the house with her, so I wasn't around her consistently. My father was and my brother was, and I think they were really far more affected by it than me. You know, I was able to at least have some separation, but still it was on my mind. The no sleeping was frightening. I have the understanding that, you know, if you don't sleep, you could die. And I could not go to sleep because my personal makeup is one of action. I don't like to have a situation I cannot deal with or control. Right? If I go on a plane, I could have no sleep for days. If I go on a plane, the mere fact that I'm not in control of the situation, I will stay awake to be ready to act should anything go wrong the entire flight until I land. Then I sleep. So that my personal makeup, and I think it's going to be different for each person. My personal makeup, you know, made it that I, in some ways, was better suited for managing this situation. The fact that I wasn't around her and it wasn't constantly in my face, I think helped having some separation there. Being able to sleep, like I said, was a panic thing because I even tried to also other medication stuff just to not, you know, be without sleep for so long and fearing what it could do to me. I ended up with some strange, you know, when your loved one gets sick, you get sick. I ended up having a pain from about right here in my head down my shoulder into my shoulder that was consistent even months after she died before it went away. And recently, a friend of mine just lost his father, and he reported having the same, you know, physical effect. You know, for me, I accept death. My brother didn't. He was desperately trying to save her. I mean, he pulled on everything. I mean, things he did, even the doctors were amazed. He put in the kind of energy and time to blend all sorts of concoctions to, you know, make her drink them that he hoped would, you know, make her at least survive. He thought he could save her. And, you know, that was not advisable, you know, because it set him up, I think, for more damage when she finally did pass.
All right. Well, I want to ask you just to stick up in there for a moment, Richard. Ladies and gentlemen, guests, our viewers and listeners, I hope you have not forgotten to share your experience to our questions for this evening. And it is, who or what was your lifeline as you watched your loved one pass away? That's our social media request for you this evening. You can send us your WhatsApp text and voice notes, no longer than 30 seconds, to 876-997-3125. And we invite you to watch us and comment live on the Love 101 Facebook and YouTube channel. Or give us a call in studio, 876-968-8327 or 876-968-8328 to participate. And I'm encouraging you as well. Friend us on Facebook at FLM Family Life Ministries, or you can follow us on Instagram at FLMJA. And again, we invite you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Family Life Ministries-FLMJA. And you can give us a call at the FLM head office, which at contact number 876-920-1034 or 876-926-8101. It is now exactly 5:45 on the hour, and we go back to the discussion. But now I'd like to invite our second guest, Sonia Winter. Welcome. Thank you for being here this evening. In your capacity as a psychologist, Richard made a comment just now which really stuck with me. He said that when we observe, we have to watch our loved ones go through terminal illness. We, the caregivers, the loved ones, we become ill as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that physical manifestation is that we experience when observing our loved ones going through a challenge like this?
Sure. Well, first of all, Richard, I must say I'm really sorry for your loss and for that of your family. I can see that it had a tremendous, the loss of your mother has had quite an effect on you. So my sympathies to you and your family. I think what Richard's family was experiencing is what we call anticipatory grief. He could see that there was a huge loss coming. And as a result, he goes through a tremendous, I just call it a roller coaster of emotions, which sometimes mimic or are similar to grief itself that happens after you lose someone important. And so there is the shock, the denial, sometimes the depression, the bargaining. It seems like perhaps Richard's, there are different stages that you go through. We're all familiar with the 5 stages of grief. Those 5 stages were actually associated with people dying, what people go through when they're dying. And it's denial. That's right. It's called DABDA. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. It's really what the person who is dying goes through. We've now associated it with grieving a loved one. But the truth is that all of those feelings happen either concurrently, sequentially, or only a few of them happen at one time. And some people go through all stages. Some people get stuck at certain stages. I think what we're hearing is that there's a possibility, for instance, that Richard's brother was stuck at the denial stage, feeling that he could always save her and that death was not going to win in this case. If he did the best that he could, then he could postpone or somehow defer death, and sometimes sometimes denial helps people, what I mean? It's the best, it's a good way of coping. It's the mind's way of just letting in just enough information that you can process. And sometimes it creates prolonged distress, and coping. In terms of the pain, what often happens is that there can be a somatic experience of your emotional experience. So when you're going through certain difficult experiences, you're actually going through a flight or fight response on a protracted basis. Okay. So Richard is staring down at the barrel of the loss of his mom, and that is a threat to him. It's a threat to his way of life. It's a threat to how he understands the structure of his life, and so on. And that throws his whole body, his whole psyche, and his physiology into that fight or flight or freeze response. So he's producing adrenaline, perhaps a low-grade dose. He's producing cortisol, perhaps a low-grade dose. And that can manifest in people's bodies in different ways. Adrenaline and cortisol are designed for us to just get a boost, and then we escape from the situation and the production stops. When that fight or flight response works against us, it's when that mechanism is over a protracted period. So different people's bodies respond to different ways. Our muscles don't like an ongoing dose of adrenaline. You know what I mean? Because adrenaline, for instance, in a moment of acute threat, the adrenaline contracts certain muscles. Like, for instance, these muscles here are contracted so that we can fight better. Okay? When that happens over a protracted period, you can understand. That's why we feel a knot in our shoulder and in our neck when we're experiencing stress over a long period of time. Our muscles are actually contracting, almost preparing to escape this physical threat, as it were, which is what our mind is telling, is mimicking. So that is how our emotional experiences can sometimes translate now into a physical experience, because our body is responding. Our body is either trapped in the fight or flight response. That's why also, when you're in the fight or flight response, the adrenaline causes your heart rate to go up. And if that's happening over an extended period of time, people have difficulty breathing, or they contract high blood pressure, for example, that sort of a thing. And as I said, it can manifest in your body in different ways because of what you're actually going through from a psychological point of view. Your brain is telling you you're in a situation of threat, and so your body is almost protecting itself in a way. And when that happens over a long period of time, you start to see different manifestations of that.
So for that person who describes their experience in a situation, it says they tend to use the term "I went numb," in that they felt nothing. So we're speaking now about that heightened state where cortisol is going, adrenaline is going, you're feeling a physical manifestation. Explain that experience for that person who says they went numb and they can't. So it's almost like they're experiencing the opposite of what you just described. What exactly is that?
Here's the way that I think of it, Theresa. Remember that your body is about protecting yourself against an imminent threat, right? That's what your body is designed to do. And it's either going to fight, flee, or freeze. And the freeze mechanism is almost like the body is playing possum. So it shuts down and all the systems shut down. Okay, your breathing becomes very low. Your heart rate actually drops in that situation. Okay, so a lot of the system shuts down, and it's all, if you think about it as a physical threat, because that's what it's designed to do, right? To protect you against a physical threat. So what is happening is that, imagine there's a physical threat approaching, and the body says, you know what? Fighting is not going to save you. You can't fight your way out of this one. Fleeing is not going to save you. So what you're going to do is you're going to shut down all your systems as much as possible, okay? And conserve energy and wait for that moment when you can. It's kind of like what possums do. You know that story of the possum? They kind of shut down in a corner, and you think they're dead. And then as soon as they see a window where they can escape, suddenly, it's all systems go, and they go. So and they take off like a rocket. And that's what the human body does. It actually kind of shuts down a lot of systems. And as a result, what you feel is this numbness, because it's almost like the brain is saying, you can't protect it. There's nothing you can do about this threat. You can't run from it. You can't fight it, sort of a thing. You might as well shut down and wait for an opportunity when you can then harvest all that saved energy and
okay,
and that will be experienced as numbness.
We're going to get into coping mechanisms a little bit later in the show, but I just wanted to touch on one thing and get your perspective on this. One of the things I noticed with Richard was that he was able to describe a lot of details in terms of understanding the medical condition that his mom was going through. With someone taking the approach of educating themselves in the finite details almost of the condition and possible options of treatment, is that a good approach for someone who is navigating something like this and going through whichever version of the initial and ongoing emotional and physiological responses to something like this? Is that something that plays a part in just general coping mechanism?
Yeah, that can be a good coping mechanism if it's a coping mechanism that works for you. We all have different ways of grieving. Now, I don't want to speak on Richard's behalf, but listening to him very carefully, I got the sense that his journey was not only one of acquiring knowledge, but it was as he was acquiring knowledge that his recognition of how dire the circumstances were was collecting as well. So in the beginning, I don't know that he expected necessarily that his mother's situation was going to end her life in the beginning. You know what I mean? So that I don't know that he was necessarily coping with anticipatory grief at the very beginning, and that his search for information was about handling the grief necessarily. You know, he was, as he said, he's a doer. His way of handling stress is to problem solve, is what I think I'm hearing him say. You know, he addresses the problem rather than is held back by the emotional experience, you know.
So essentially the success of that approach is really tied to the individual and what works for them as a coping mechanism.
Absolutely.
For you, Richard, was that a means to navigate the situation, or a coping mechanism for you? Was that more a function of just your personality and being very detail oriented?
I'd say it was logical. You know, I was faced with a problem. Well, let me see. I don't think anybody could help themselves, right? You know, you don't want your mother to die, so you're going to do everything you can, right, to figure it out, to find some way, you know. But you know, you got to know when to stop, right? When you've reached the limit. I think my brother didn't. You know, I certainly recognize. I think, and it was something maybe I suppressed a little bit in the beginning, because once I saw her belly button change, I know enough to know. You know, that meant cancer had spread. I understand. You know, if not the detail of cancer and cancer treatment, at least up to that point when I saw her belly button, I knew this was not good at all, and that the odds were not great for her surviving. But at the moment, perhaps I suppressed that a bit and went about the methodology of trying to figure out, okay, what can we do? But as it bore on, you know, I'll say this, you know, I was caught between not wanting her to die and wanting her to die, just to have her out of the suffering, as nothing was working, right? And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about cancer, death, life, myself. I became an overnight expert, right? And when, as I was saying before, when people get sick, you get sick. And in that way, mentally, I got sick. More than just the head, feet, and shoulder. I had started having suicidal thoughts, and this was after she had passed. You know, I actually, for the first time ever, Googled ways to kill myself. And a friend took me back from the edge as I'd become completely nihilistic, and I lost all purpose and interest in life. And it's very important not only to have good friends you can trust, but fully share what you're going through and the thoughts you're having. Leave nothing out. Total honesty. Depression, I didn't even know about that. I'm very likely I actually collapsed to the ground, full blackout, when I tried to get back to life, walking up Mola Dam, which you see behind me, first time ever in my life having that happen.
Wow.
Yeah, it's and as strong as I think I am, right? Yes, I came to these moments, and this is the first time, I guess, publicly I'm admitting into this.
Well, I want to say, Richard, thank you so much for just being so open and willing to share your experience with us. And I know that it's a blessing for somebody who feels that maybe they're experiencing something and they're the only ones. I want to say a special thank you to you for sharing that with us. You have been listening and watching Family Time on Love 101 FM, YouTube, and Facebook Live. It's produced by Family Life Ministries. For our social media interaction, we want you to tell us who or what was your lifeline as you watched your loved one pass away. Let us know via WhatsApp, text, and voice notes. Keep those voice notes no longer than 30 seconds. To 876-997-3125. Or you can post them on the Love 101 Facebook page. Or you can give us a call in studio. Our studio lines are 876-968-8327 or 8328 to participate. We're also Facebook and YouTube Live. We want to hear from you. Don't go away. We're talking about you when your loved one is terminally ill. And with us, we have Richard Dennison and Sonia Wint as our special guests this evening. And we will continue right after this break.
Need to make a change to your title or need a title?
GLand Title Limited. We do lost title applications, add and remove names from titles, wills, estates. First-time registration land surveys included. Affordable rates and flexible payment options. NLA adjudication and land titling waivers available. They have 8 locations island-wide. Call them at 876-754-6436 or visit their website at geolandonline.com. GLand Title Limited. Secure your land, secure your title.
This is the soothing sound of your finances being handled by Grace Kennedy Financial Group. And this? It's actually the relaxing noise of your car and home insurance, handled by experts you can trust. Trust Grace Kennedy Financial Group to do your banking, insurance, investments, money services, and more gracefully. Get to know us at gracekennedyfinancialgroup.com.
The Ministry of Health and Wellness is advising pregnant and breastfeeding mothers to get vaccinated against COVID-19. This is in line with recommendations from the World Health Organization and having regard to evidence which suggests that pregnant women with COVID-19 are at higher risk of developing severe illness compared with non-pregnant women of reproductive age. COVID-19 in pregnancy has also been associated with an increased risk of preterm birth and of newborns requiring neonatal intensive care. Pregnant women who are 35 years and older or have high body mass index or an existing comorbidity such as diabetes or hypertension are at particular risk of serious outcomes from COVID-19. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Looking for a way to honor a loved one you've lost, to celebrate the treasured memories and express appreciation for the blessings they brought into your life? Well, now you have a place where you can come to pause, reflect, and celebrate those who came, cared, and shared. It's the feature called In Memory Of, aired right here on Love 101, the family station. Share your memories live, the pleasantries you mostly recall about your loved one who has passed. Make a booking. Call our sales office at 876-968-9596 or 876-968-9597. In memory of, starting soon, and Love 101. Death is not the opposite of life, only a part of it.
You are love.
H&L Ultimate Touch Promotions Limited invites you to celebrate with us during our 12% 12 for 12 Bliss discount and anniversary sale ending October 30. Visit 31st Studio 1 Boulevard Crossroads or call 876-754-7825-6. H&L Ultimate Touch Promotions Limited. Retail printing to your door.
Good evening and welcome back. It is now exactly 6:03 p.m. and you are tuned to Love 101. This is Family Time, brought to you by Family Life Ministries. FLM provides counseling for people with all kinds of challenges from all walks of life. Listen out for our numbers in Kingston and Portmore at the end of the show. And remember, we're on Facebook and YouTube Live. So tune into the program via the Love 101 Facebook page and YouTube channel. Let me remind you of our social media request. We want to know who or what was your lifeline as you watched your loved one pass away. Send us your WhatsApp text and voice notes. Those voice notes no longer than 30 seconds to 876-997-3125. Or you can post on the Love 101 Facebook page, or you can give us a call on our studio lines, 876-968-8327 or 8328 to participate. Before I continue with our guests, I just want to share, I'll start by saying a special good evening to some persons we have joining us online, and that's Anne-Marie Williams and Pauline Williamson. Thank you for joining us. And we have a comment here from Nikki Brown. Losing my dad was the worst experience ever. It took me years to overcome such a loss. But with family and loved ones, I am okay today. Through times though at times I truly miss dad. Daddy was my lifeline. Thank you so much for your comment, Nikki. And I think we have a couple voice notes that we can share now.
Good afternoon, family time. Just want to share my experience about my lifeline where I lose my loved one. I lose a lot, couple sisters, well, brothers, and so forth. But my deepest loss was my twin sister, my other half, when she passed away. It was so painful. Even now, I still feel remorse when I think about her, look at her picture. But Love 101 was there for me, my family, friends, my church family, and of course, God words that comfort me. God to be the glory to Love 101 FM.
Good evening to the panel. I just want to say that to see someone passing away is very painful. I have gotten that experience. I saw my brother pass off from cancer, and 6 months after, my mother died from a stroke. During that time, it was so painful to me, missing my son. I cried, I prayed, I praised God. I could not sleep. I had was to take vitamins. So right now, if someone has lost their loved ones, I think they should go to the doctor and get some form of vitamins, an experience that we just can't talk about. I do not talk about my mother and brother much, neither look on their pictures. I just imagine it's hard to lose a loved one, as the song says, to the grave. I thank God for keeping me. And I even thank God for my church brethren at that time. My brethren has to rally around praying and I would say hushing me. I could not cope. It's very hard. It's very painful.
Good afternoon. I was motionless when my son passed. I was with him 24/7 and looking and leaving for only maybe 15 minutes to lie down, to be prostrated, and then when he said, "Mommy," and when I run into the room, the hospital, he was motionless, and I was too. Although I was screaming and crying out, "Why did you do this to me?"
Well, I just want to say thank you to those listeners who sent those voice notes, and extend our condolences to each and everyone who has experienced this sort of loss. For today's show, we have Richard Dennison and Sonia Winter as our guests. Richard's mom was diagnosed with cancer, and like many others, he watched as his mother got sicker and sicker, and then she passed away. Sonia Winter is a clinical psychologist and is the founder of Tea House Therapy. We're talking about persons who have or are now literally watching a loved one pass in front of their eyes. They could be the caregiver or just anyone closely connected to the individual. Sonia, we're going to start this segment with you. We're shifting the discussion now more towards how just to navigate something like this. We touched on in the previous segment one possible option for coping mechanism, which is gathering information. But before we kind of go back down that road, experiencing someone who you love transition, it brings about I would assume a litany of emotions that maybe even the emotions that we can't even put a word to, a description to, but we're feeling all of these things, sometimes maybe for the first time. How does one just navigate that emotional spectrum?
Yes. Again, if you'd permit me, I want to hail Richard for his courage in being so vulnerable by sharing that he actually had suicidal thoughts. Because, Richard, I assure you, by sharing that, you've helped someone else to realize that, what they're experiencing is they're not alone in what they're experiencing. And you also touched on one of the best ways to cope with this situation, which is to reach out to somebody you trust to tell them what it is that you're feeling. As I said earlier, depression is one of the phases that we often experience when we either are anticipating a loss, or after we have experienced an important loss. You know, depression is something that many of us experience, and with depression, sometimes comes suicidal thoughts, you know, because depression brings hopelessness, and hopelessness is that nothing is going to be different or better for me tomorrow. Therefore, it's better, you know, if I just end it right here. And that can happen to anybody. And if you are able, and unfortunately too, one of the symptoms of depression is that we tend to isolate ourselves. We withdraw into ourselves, into a cocoon almost, you know, and we pull down the windows and turn off the lights in a little cocoon, which kind of feels safer in a way, but in truth, it's keeping us from being connected to other people, which is a therapeutic experience in and of itself. So just being able to deal with those emotions, just being able to reach out to a trusted person who will listen to you, who is educated and aware enough to not judge you for what you're going through, or to condemn, or to criticize you, or to invalidate what you're experiencing. You know, that's very important, to say, oh no, come on, pull yourself together, you should, you know, you shouldn't be feeling that. But instead to say, look, this is serious, let's get help, let's get out, let me take you somewhere, let me remind you of all the wonderful reasons you have to live. You know what I mean? You're going through something really difficult, and these are the reasons why you have to keep going and going through it, for instance. So that's one huge way. Even before that, though, just recognizing, and I hate this, it's great that you're having this program, Theresa, because understanding what you will go through on the threshold of such an experience helps you then to identify that you're going through a grief experience. You know, and that way you're able to better able to help yourself if you recognize what's happening to you. A lot of times people are going through the experience and they're not even aware of it. They're so drowning in it, you know, that they're not aware of it. Once you're aware of it, it's being able to actually feel and come and experience the feelings that you're having. Okay. Being able to recognize that this is a tremendous sense of despair that I am feeling, that I am feeling anger, that that I'm being denied the opportunity to share more experiences with this person. Recognizing that I'm feeling fear about what the future now holds for my loved one and for me. Recognizing and being able to label all of those emotions and almost experience them is, believe it or not, a therapeutic. It helps you to go through the grieving process to a place where you're more able to incorporate the person's loss into your life as a reality, you know. And the best that one can hope for through the grieving process is to get to a place where when you think of the person that you've lost, you think of the joy that they brought you more so than the loss that they have incurred. That's kind of where you get that's the sunshine at the end of the tunnel, you know, when you can appreciate the gift that they were to your life. It may be a shortened gift or a protracted gift, but a gift nonetheless. And that when you think of them, all you can think of is how they enriched your life and how much, you know, how much joy they brought you. That's kind of like the resolution that grief can bring you.
Okay. Changing gears a little bit. A lot of times when persons are interacting with someone who is ill, generally, you're not sure what to say. Because you feel kind of silly going, how are you? You know how I am. I'm not well. But in the context now of the specific dynamic of interacting with someone who's terminally ill, what are some of the things to say, some of the things not to say when interacting? So you don't want to not associate with them or kind of pull yourself away, but you don't necessarily want to say something that could be a potential trigger. How does someone navigate that?
The first thing is what you touched on, Therese. Try not to avoid them. A lot of us are so fearful of being around a person. You know, a lot of us say, well, I don't want to remember them in that state, or, you know, there are a lot of reasons why we can end up rationalize why we ought to avoid the person. That you don't want to do that. You definitely don't want to do that. What the next thing to bear in mind is that we can tend to infantilize somebody who is ill. Okay, so you start dealing with them almost like they're like a child, and and that can happen to us unawares, you know. So it's to be able to maintain a kind of their dignity by dealing with them and as an adult, speaking to them as an adult and affording them, treating them as if they have some independence and still have some decision making agency in their life when you speak to them. Does that make sense? Because we have a tendency to kind of treat them, mollycoddle them, and that can exacerbate the situation. The next thing, the third thing that I would share with you is saying to the person, "What do you need? You know, how can I be supportive of you right now? Do you want to talk about?" Do you want to talk about what you're going through? Do you want me to visit more often, or do you need space sometimes? Would you like me to read to you? Would you like me to take you to see a scenery? What can I do? I want to support you. You tell me, is there any way that I can help to give you what you might need right now? That's an opening to what can be a huge conversation. You know what I mean? And a lot of us assume also that the person who is dying does not want to speak about it. You may be right. That's not an automatic situation. You'd be surprised that some people do want to speak about it. Richard's mother clearly was planning her funeral and so on. She wanted to think about it. She wanted to make plans. You know, and a lot of times when our loved one starts to talk about their mortality, we shut them down. You know, it's almost you know, it's like we don't want to face that reality. And it's a lot of self-control to say, tell me what you want to talk about. I will experience the discomfort of hearing you if that's what you need right now. So it's trying to be sensitive and open the door for your loved ones, maybe to express unexpressed emotions. That sometimes can help them as well. You know, they might be going through shock and denial and fear and so on. And sometimes if they want to talk about it and you let them, that can help to bring relief as well. So it's being sensitive to their needs and opening the door to help them to articulate what their needs might be.
Okay, excellent. It is no exactly.
I'm so sorry, I saw Richard shaking his head, almost in agreement with something. Does something connect with you, Richard?
If you could just hang on to that for 1 second, Richard. I just want to let our listeners know it is exactly 17 p.m. This is Family Time, brought to you by Family Life Ministries, FLM. FLM provides counseling for people with all kinds of challenges from all walks of life. Listen out for our numbers in Kingston and Portmore at the end of the program. Back to you, Richard. There was a point that connected with you just now. What was that?
Yes. The idea of, you know, letting people who are sick have some agency, and, you know, just to let them live. You know, I mean, these are precious moments that they have left. You know, there's a tendency to want to, you know, for some, right, to kind of lead with, okay, we need to give you this medicine and you need to take this. No, let them eat ice cream, let them have cake, all the things they wanted, let them live, because these are the last, you know, minutes, days, and hours, right, that they're going to have in life. And, you know, for example, my mother, you know, after picking up from the hospital, you know, I said, you know, Mom, let's just take a drive. Let me just take you out somewhere. You know, let's not go back into the house where you're sitting here in the misery and in the pain and the suffering. You know, let's talk about things. You know, we haven't been around this corner of the, you know, town in a while. Let me just take you on a drive around there. And I think in the end, those are some moments I cherish, because, you know, I felt like in that moment, I was able to give her something that she could hold on to, you know, that she could take and not have to be focused on the suffering she was going through.
You know, Theresa,
go ahead.
Richard reminded me of something also. You know what might be surprising? Sometimes people who are facing their mortality, you know what they often want to do? They want to reminisce with you.
Yes.
And that's very emotional, but it can be very cathartic for them, you know? So, you know, talking about, you know, their life journey can be something that's very supportive as well, you know, and making sure you open that door is important. Looking at photographs together, for instance, can be something that really just helps them through this difficult time.
Very much so. My mother in the hospital, we were waiting in the hospital for 3 days in a chair, all of us sitting there waiting for her to get admitted, okay? And it was terrible. I mean, I wasn't going to, but I took advantage of the time. I said, you know what, Mom, let me ask you every question I ever had that I never took the time out to ask you. Tell me everything about your life. And that formed the summary for me to then write a proper eulogy, right? I asked her about it, and in those moments, she wasn't suffering. She was caught up in the reminiscence, caught up in the moments, and the pleasure, if you will, of being able to know that she would have that proper send off. It literally was the best funeral I've ever seen or known about, because she dictated every instance of it, from the songs to who was to sing to what was being said. The only thing that wasn't part of the plan, obviously, was the eulogy I wrote. And and to truth, I've been meaning to put it up, because one of the things, as I should mention, the feelings don't necessarily go away. Okay, let me be clear about that. I did a lot of research trying to find out what other people went through suffering such a loss, because I'd never had such a close loss in my life. So I, being common sense, person, realized maybe I need to look into this just to brace myself for what I may be running into, because never again in my life had I faced such a challenge. And most of the stories were of a serious blow that people didn't recover from. So I had a real fear that I would not recover from this, but I have to say I did. It didn't go away, but I have a way. I've suppressed it. And how I know I've suppressed it is that when I see pictures of my mother, I cannot look continuously at it. It's almost as if worms start to crawl up in me and feelings start to build, and I have to look away. I have to look away. Even now, it's getting better over time. I think I'm learning mechanisms for handling it, and getting back to life is helping. But I just want to point that out, that don't expect a full recovery. I'm still not sure how deep the roots run, right? But I do know I've gained control.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Before we continue, I just want to share a couple comments we have from our viewers. First one here is from Tisha James. Well, I can say I lost my grandma in 2018. It was very hard. It was very hard. Still, I take it hard, and even had to go to the doctor. Now, when I remember her, it brings tears. It still brings tears. Like she was my mother, and she was the one who raised me from the age 3. She was a good, caring person, and I could share anything with her. I want to say a welcome also to Merle Dixon, who is joining us. And I have one more comment, one more submission here from WhatsApp. And it says, good evening. I lost my wife 2 months ago to cancer, and the pain is still as real as the day she passed. We were married for 31 years, and life seems to come to a standstill. I'm still having questions of why, but only the Lord knows the answers. My strength comes from my entire family, especially my daughter, mother, and sister. They have been a rock in what feels like sinking sand. The only way to explain my grief is thinking of a car at the edge of a cliff that plunged into a dark, dark maze. I pray that the Lord will award me strength to continue. Thank you for your program. It is encouraging. And I'm happy to hear this individual say that this is encouraging for them, even sharing of this tremendous loss. And please accept our condolences on the loss of your wife. Switching gears a little bit, Sonia, we're short on time, so I just want to touch on this aspect quickly. And Richard, you can share your thoughts as well. What are the support systems available, or what are the support systems that persons experiencing this sort of transition, grief, and loss? What are some of the resources available, and where should they look? What are some of the things they should tap into quickly? You're muted, Sonia.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, the primary resources and the ones that you should reach for first are your family and friends. Those are the most important resources that you can leverage. Be sure that you choose wisely. That there are friends who can support you and family who are able to support you. That's the most important resource that you can really leverage. Outside of that, I would recommend that if you find that you're not coping with life's different challenges and the different domains of your life, as I outlined earlier, your relationships, your work, and so on, your self-care is suffering, then it's important to try to get professional help. You can get professional help in the public medical health system. All the hospitals have counseling and psychological services and clinics available to you. And of course, there are a number of private practices where you can also get, and you'll talk about family life, I know, in the break as well, where you can get considerable help, and there's people waiting to support you. The other systems are kind of like resources you pull on for yourself, trying to find things that bring you meaning, such as helping other people, volunteering to help other people. Sometimes that helps is like a balm for your own pain as well, and connecting in groups as well, that have a shared goal that can remind you that you're part of something bigger than just yourself, and that can be extremely therapeutic. Focusing on your self-care and your responsibility to other people, trying to create meaning in your life as well, is a very, very important therapeutic tool that individuals can use. And then we can get more into more details, such as trying to recreate structure I'm sorry, in your life, um, trying to be with people who lift your spirits, trying to socialize. As I said, sometimes when we're really sad and depressed, we don't do things that necessarily serve our mental health.
That's true.
And connecting with people is one thing, not even necessarily with the view to sharing, but just to connect. Like it's a human survival strategy, to connect with the people.
Okay, so if I can just, in the interest of time, I was going to ask you just to stick up in right there. For you, Richard, what were some of the resources that
faith and spirituality?
Absolutely. For you, Richard, what were some of the other resources that aided you through this season? And you did make mention of your support system earlier.
Right, and I'll just say I lucky enough had done things ahead of time, just in living, that aided me through this. I'll say this. I mean, the obvious stuff: keeping good health, get regular checkups and exercise, eat healthy, get proper sleep. For my mom, if she had not ignored the warning signs, she'd have been alive today, right? So for the people out there, don't ignore warning signs. And this is nothing you've not heard before, but you need to do these things immediately from this very day forward. No more excuses, right? Make good use of time. As I said before, ask all the questions now. Make the loved ones that you love them, and don't leave unresolved issues that when they die you have that, because these things will stick once that person dies, because you cannot resolve them after the fact. And prepare for death, plans, death money, the wishes, handling of property and personal effects after you're gone. Make sure those things are addressed before the person is sick. Don't wait till this moment drops for that.
Okay. All right. As we're heading towards our wrap up, I just want to ask you, Richard, just to give your closing, and then we'll have a quick word from you, Sonia, and then we'll do our wrap up.
Sure. I'd say make sure you have a hobby or an interest to dive into. That helps me to distract your mind when the time comes, because you might find yourself on drugs. I have to admit here, I actually tried weed and I had no interest before, but I tried weed just to not feel what I was feeling, to ease it somehow. Having interests such as music or projects that I set up, after the fact, again, helping people help pull me through all of this. So will you recover? Yes, completely. It's possible. People die every day. In the world of people is still here, still moving forward, as it always will until judgment, right? You learn how to suppress the feelings. They may not leave you, but you will regain control.
Yeah. Okay. Sonia, 30 seconds. Your wrap up for us, please. You're still muted. You're muted.
I want to just share that all the feelings that you experience at this loss are normal, healthy, and legitimate. I think that the grief itself is to recognize that the feelings of grief are healthy. Quite often, it's our response to those feelings that are unhealthy and that sabotage us. Richard explained that he felt the pain just felt so unbearable that he sought ways to terminate the pain, which may not have served him in the end. So once we can rationalize that, look, if I love, then I will hurt when I say goodbye. That's the deal of life, the contract of life. If I love, and understanding that pain is a part of the deal.
Okay, thanks, Sonia. Richard, 30 seconds. You're closing.
Well, that's it. I hope from my experience and from the things we have said here today, that people will listen and act. As I was saying, a lot of what I ended up doing, and I just got lucky that mom didn't just suddenly drop dead, because a lot of what I was able to accomplish happened because we knew, and there was a long timeline and opportunities to go in and address things that had not been addressed in life. So the lesson, there's no other takeaway today, is if you have to go back on the website, rewatch the show, and all these pieces of advice, take them serious, because when the time comes and you get hit, you may not survive it. I hate to put it that way, but there are people who kill themselves after loved ones, and I came very close, very, very close, and I'm not making any bones about this. I've never done this in my life before, and I found reason to at least start, logically preparing to go that route. And it's only my friends and my hobbies and things that pull me back from the edge.
All right. Richard Dennison, Sonia Winter, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experiences and your insights and your tips. And thank you to our viewers and listeners for being here with us. If you have questions of a personal nature or are concerned about a friend or family member, give us a call at Family Life Ministries for our center in Portmore at 117 Cecile Avenue. You can call us at 876-939-7917. For more information on our services or for councils in Kingston and other parts of the island, you can contact our head office at 876-920-1034 or 876-926-8101. Note that appointments can only be made by calling the offices. Otherwise, to keep up to date with what's happening with FLM and our programs, you can find us on Facebook at FLM Family Life Ministries, on Instagram at FLMJA, or you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, Family Life Ministries-FLMJA. Before we leave you, here is this evening's verse. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 26. The last enemy will be abolished is death. The last enemy that will be abolished is death. Join us again next week at 5:30 p.m. on Love 101 FM, Facebook and YouTube Live via the Love 101 Facebook page and Love 101 YouTube channel for another informative program. Thanks again to our special guests, Richard Dennison and Sonia Winter. Thanks also to our show producer, Kathy Gale, Open Door Communications, our studio facilitator, Rashane Douglas, and of course you. I am Theresa Benjamin. Stay safe, stay well, stay blessed.
This is Love 101 FM. Thank you for listening to Family Time. It's now 6:32.